Yes, welcome to the VIP Vegas podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Tim Larkin, in the house, the self-protection and close protection specialist. How are we doing, my man?
Just sitting here thinking of all my years in Vegas and just what I can and can't say, you know.
This is the thing, isn't it?
Always
Yeah.
the way. It was like,
It's
can you
like,
say this?
what can you tell, you know?
Yeah, we just got to keep it on a level, well, half level. It don't matter. It's like, we always put on the YouTube and stuff over 18s anyway. So you can sort of, you know, you don't have to keep it PG basically.
Yeah, no. It's Vegas. Anything goes.
Yeah, you know that.
We'd like to always start at the beginning, like introduce you a little bit for yourself and your background.
And you know, everybody has their Vegas story, how the hell we got here.
Yeah,
like nobody, very few people actually plan on being here. I know I didn't, you know. And it's just freaking hilarious stories, you know.
You just end up in Sin City.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like,
So my background in the military, I started out in special operations community SEAL teams, blew my ears, and then went into the intelligence community. And one of my specialties that I got involved with was hand-to-hand combat, close combat. And that became, you know, something that I was known for. And I was training with my old partner in the late, when was this? So it was 97. We were training out of the blue, the Vegas Marshals saw us and they contacted us. And we'd been working with like federal prisons, and we'd been working, you know, mostly a lot of tier 1 groups. We were doing a lot of private military contracts. We weren't doing a lot of civilian corporate yet.
Yeah. Where was this? Sorry, Tim. Outside. Where was this? Obviously outside of Vegas.
Yeah,
and then
we were originally my first training center that we had that was really the big commercial. Kind of like we had like a mini Blackwater before Blackwater.
Right.
You know, like it was the pre-PMC days. You know, like you know, and now it's all normal. But back then, you had to be really careful when you were training groups, especially foreign groups, because then, now the rules have changed, but then, you know, you could be seen as, you know, promoting terrorism. If you tried anything that was military, you know, another military, you had to be really careful. So everything we did was through State Department. We were in Phoenix, the Brunt School then was sponsored by Ford Motor Company, and it was on Gila River Indian Reservation. And so they had me come on because they had a lot of groups come in, you know, a lot of spec ops groups come in, and they do driving with night vision and stuff like that. So I did all that. I did all the, I ran that whole program for them. And the cool deal for us was, you know, we were a tactical training group. We started working with the Indians, and the Indian, you know, it's kind of weird. Like, people don't really understand Indian nations. They're sovereign. They are federal, you know, law enforcement. Yeah. But they control their area. So here I am in Phoenix, and they come to me and they say, "Hey, what do you want to do out here?" I'd asked them for permission to do some shooting on their land.
Right. Was there a language barrier? Or they
No. They were great. They were in there. Super competent guys and cool people. They were building casinos at the time. That's where they started making all their money. You know, all the Indian River casinos and stuff. So there's a Vegas connection there because some of the guys, Harrah's was one of the first ones there. So I started meeting a lot of Vegas guys.
Yeah.
And that's where I met one of the marshals. But anyways, the cool part about it was with the Indians, they completely supported us. So I had all my weapons, all my tactical weapons, all my explosives, everything on Indian land, which is kind of unique. Now I had all my ATF licenses and everything. We were basically doing whatever the hell we wanted out there with full support from the Indian nations. And what they got out of it was for a while, they were probably one of the best trained Indian law enforcement groups in the world. Because I had all my Delta Force guys coming through, all my other tier 1 groups, and all they asked for were 2 slots for every class. And so that's what I did, and they gave me like unbelievable support.
Sweet. Right, I get you. Say, So you was never like in the back of your mind thinking these guys could take all my stuff because it's on their land at any time. No, you never had that inkling.
I'll tell you, it's the most secure I ever felt all my equipment was. You know, and my partners felt the same way. Great to work with too. So we were there. But during that time, I ran into a marshal here that was there. Now, most people don't understand. Everybody thinks Vegas is Vegas. So when you see the police here, you're seeing Metro, and Metro is Clark County.
Yeah,
Clark County is huge. Clark County, as far as the size of Clark County, comparative to another to another state in the U.S., it's the size of Connecticut. So it's a very large area. They cover that. The Marshals, there's, Las Vegas itself is a very small little city.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And it has a mayor, and everybody thinks it's the mayor of the whole. No, it's just the mayor of downtown.
Paradise,
like Fremont area.
That area. I see, right, yeah.
And so the Marshals were running things. They originally came to us because
they needed some help, basically. They needed a bit of,
They needed help. Well, they almost got themselves in a real shit show.
Right.
There's a program. There's a program, and they tell me it's not actually happening anymore, but I doubt it. Yeah. They had a lot of extra prison space in downtown Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And the feds came to him and said, hey, how would you like us to give you a premium price, and we'll send you a bunch of prisoners, and you house them, and it'll be a great deal for you. You can make a lot, you're not using this. So And, so Vegas, being Vegas, sure. We'll take it.
But they didn't have no one to control the prisoners. That's the thing. That's obviously where you're coming in.
What they didn't know was this. They had no idea what they're getting. Yeah. So here in the U.S., and again, there are foreign nationals that come in here, non-U.S. citizens.
As Trump loves to tell everyone every day of the week.
Exactly. Exactly. We did not call them undocumented. We called them illegals.
So,
that promoted horrendous crimes. And they would do their time. And then the host country wouldn't take them back. So we had the feds had this program where every 14 months they'd move them around, just hoping.
Oh,
totally.
Sweet.
Illegal, meaning, I mean, if it had really been challenged, it's there. But these guys are like the worst of the worst. Yeah. These Vegas Marshals are not set up for, these types of individuals. And so we came in, we started asking a lot of questions, and boom, we're doing in there, and we're looking at what it would take to upgrade the prison that they had, where they're going to house these guys. And I started telling them, who they were going to get.
Yeah.
What? What? Yeah, they don't.
Face drop.
Yeah, they don't tell you the whole story. You
don't
just get that money because these guys are,
of course,
shoplifters. So, anyways, that was my first interaction with Vegas. I came to Vegas once when I was in the university when the Mirage opened. So I wasn't a Vegas guy. I had no.
Right.
So I worked there, and they treated me great, and they put me up. I heard you guys one of the places you guys are staying at the Luxor. They put me up at the Luxor, beautiful suite, whole deal. It was really unique, because I really hadn't spent much time in Vegas. So after that, they approached us. They loved working with us, and they loved our. We were very honest about it. We were just like, hey guys, I would love to charge and get a big contract, but I really think this is a bad idea.
That's the other thing I was going to say, Tim, quickly. Sorry to interrupt, right? But with these guys, you're saying the home country wouldn't take them back, right? So what, surely they have to take them back because they're nationals. Yeah. So.
Well, a group like Trump, like an administration like Trump's administration is the first one to challenge stuff like that.
Right.
Other administrations would be, and I'm talking Republican or Democrat, they would they wouldn't even waste it. So they had this weird program where these guys, imagine you've done all your prison. Now, a lot of them didn't know. A lot of them weren't as savvy, and they didn't realize what was going on.
Right.
Because the federal system is very different, and they can move people around differently. But it was just basically playing, just musical chairs with these guys. Just finding what sucker would take them.
But what I'm saying is, once they've done their time, because I'm taking it they got sentenced, or do they just get an indefinite sentence? They never get let out.
No, they would have a true sentence, and they kind of knew it, and then they were telling them I forgot what they were doing. It was crazy.
They just weren't letting them out, basically.
And they just wouldn't let them out. Right. And they certainly weren't. They weren't going to put them back on our streets.
Yeah.
And the host country wouldn't take them home because they're like, we don't want them.
We don't want them.
Yeah.
And the other thing they were concerned about was also we had to be cognizant of the fact that some of these countries, they go, oh yeah, we'll take them back. They'll take them back and shoot them right away. And of course, if that gets out, that wasn't something that those administrations wanted to deal with.
That's out of your hands, surely, though, because that's something.
But the press would have jumped on it and stuff like, oh, you knowingly. So I understand the dynamics behind it. So we dodged that bullet.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
And then this is like late '90s. And then, of course, the greatest boondoggle of all time happened here, which was the Y2K, the year 2000 problem. Now, you guys are kind of young. You probably don't get this move. But basically, we thought the world was ending. Wow. And what it was most computer programs were designed to only have 2 digits.
I heard that.
And they thought literally 1999,
it was all going to crash.
2000, the whole world was going to just shut down. So the preparation was crazy. Like they came in here, and City of Las Vegas calls us up and says, "Hey guys, can you help us with this? We have to coordinate, and we don't, we're not really sure how to do this correctly." So they were responsible. They had a couple, I think, reservoirs they had to get up, and they had to, watch the power grid and all that other stuff. And so we did a very small contract with them. I was just kind of advising. We did a little bit of training and stuff like that. And what happens if everything goes down in the city of Las Vegas, just the city, Fremont area.
Right.
What would you do? How would you do it? And how you respond? And what would you need from National Guard and stuff like that? But what became readily apparent, you have to understand this, pre 9/11, there was no coordination between the agencies. It's not like it is now. Now we have fusion centers where everybody talks to everybody, like CIA will talk to FBI, and FBI will talk to local law enforcement, and they'll talk to the local military and all of that. We didn't have that back then.
Yes, that's like in the UK as well. It's been like that. Where none of the departments really conversated, but now they're all like in cohesion.
Yeah, we had to learn that the hard way through, everything going to hell when nobody does that. So then they're saying, well, hey, this new thing came down and says we're supposed to coordinate with the FBI, but we don't know anybody in there. So me, because of my background and everything, I was just like, fuck, I'll call. I'm sorry.
It's cool, man.
Shit. I just started calling my buddies. I just started calling back DC and all, the people I've known through working out the years. And all I did was literally
connect the dots.
It's like calling one of your friends and say who you know, and you go, hey, these guys in Vegas need this. Who would I talk to? He goes, oh, you want to talk to this guy? Boom. I look like a rock star.
That's old school, isn't it, man? That's before the internet, really, wasn't it?
It literally was just like boom, boom, calling people. So I would hook up the DEA, hooked up everybody, so everybody coordinated. And I introduced, now I don't want to say the agencies all knew this. It was, the opportunity for me was, it was solely City of Las Vegas, the mayor's office, and their law enforcement team, which is the marshals. A very small group, but they were responsible in this particular situation for something. So I got put up in this contract. Again, they put me up in this amazing suite at the Luxor. My partner and I were just like, guys, and all we were basically doing was just, hey, you want to talk to this guy, boom. And I got to meet a lot of my friends I hadn't seen in years and stuff. So we put up this whole thing like the world was going to end. So we were here for approximately 18 months working that contract.
Well, in the Luxor, you were just there in the Luxor. That's class.
I had to do other things. We were flying around. We train all over the world, but we would do blocks of time, and we were based out here. What was interesting from a Vegas standpoint was I started getting. We're based in Phoenix. I told you. Now back then, Phoenix didn't have a lot of direct flights. So if you're driving, if you're in the Southwest, but if you're coming from the East Coast, Phoenix is usually an extra flight. It's going to be a connector.
Right.
Vegas didn't. Vegas was direct flights. So a lot of my East Coast clients are like, "Hey, are you training in Vegas?" I said, "Well, yeah, I could." And then what's great is because I started meeting all the local law enforcement people, they'd point me to, "Oh, you want to go talk to this guy? Here's a training area and stuff." We then found out how business friendly Nevada was, and for our concern, obviously, is corporate liability. And here it is just great. We had real protection from what we were doing. You're doing explosive entry and stuff like that, and working with that, you want to make sure that you're protected liability wise. So Nevada was very good for that. And so my partner and I just said, well, why don't we start training here a little bit? We just found out it was just such a business-friendly place and so easy to do things, and my clients loved it because they were already coming here for conventions and stuff like that.
Plus, you got the whole desert out there as well, so stuff like that. You could is that where you was doing a lot of the training, just out in the coast?
And of course, because I'd been talking to Nellis, there's a place up here called Indian Springs, one of their places. They then took me on board and they said, "Hey, listen, we'll house all your explosives." Same thing with the Air Force. The Air Force is great, and their security folks are good. But they're not like tier one. They're not like, what the civilians know as like a SEAL Team 6 or Delta Force. Those were all our guys that we were bringing in. Now I'm not from those units, but I have all those connections. And so when I would train law enforcement, they'd get Delta, they'd get SEAL Team 6 guys with the latest training that they had, and it was really unique. So I was known, I was known for that, and then all of a sudden we started being able to do civilian trainings also, and so it just made sense, and we moved here.
Did you? So at what point as well? Like, we know when you had all of your stuff, all of your kit and your gear in the Indian territory.
Yeah.
What was the? So did you at that point when it was going quite well with the training over here? Did you move all your kit over?
Yeah.
And how did they take that? Was they
were great. They were really cool because I still listen to this day. If they call me, we'll take care of them because they were such good people. They know what they did, but they're really squared away now. They've got some good people, and that was unique. And then when I came out here, I kind of had a similar thing with the guys at Indian Springs, which is a part of Nellis. They had ranges, they had explosive storage and everything. So for my company, it was like all they cared about was, that that we got them training, which was the easiest thing for us to give them. I mean, they were literally giving us thousands and thousands of dollars of storage space and free and guarded, military guarded spaces.
Wow. I suppose you'd need to though, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Having that sort of stuff, it needs to be guarded because that gets into the wrong hands, like you were saying about certain.
What's so crazy about back in those days, I'll just say that aside, and it'll probably make sense to some people, but and again, it's all pre 9/11, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing explosive training, the thing that they really want to control are the blasting caps. There are these little things, you've seen them, they look like little straws and stuff, and you put them in, and they're because those are the accelerators. Those are the things that can, initiate explosions.
Yeah.
This is Vegas. Vegas ATF. I had a safe at my house in Summerlin.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And the ATF guy comes in, and I go, hey, I gotta store my blasting caps and everything. He looks at my safe. He goes, "I can do it there." I'm like, and I'm like in this posh neighborhood,
in your house,
in a really gated community. The whole thing. They had no freaking idea that I probably had 50 to 60 blasting caps, just in my house at all the time. I don't think my wife at the time knew either.
But when you say, so blasting cap, you mean actually, so you can set them off from your house?
Yeah, so if you have something, I could
like detonator.
I could literally, I could take that. So a lot of times if you have a block of, say, plastic explosive, like a C4, Semtex, something like that.
Yeah.
To initiate it, you need a blasting cap. And so the thing they really control is the blasting cap. Like for us in our gun facility, the thing they really care about is the receiver and the sear that you have on there. That's what they control. The rest of the gun is really irrelevant as far as the control. It's that one area that makes it an automatic weapon that you have to monitor. Here on the explosive sides, they really like if you cannot account for these blasting caps, you're in a lot of trouble. But the fact that they let me
had it all in your house,
you
must have felt like a G-do, man, being in your house. Like, I've got all this power, and I'm
laughing my butt off.
Shit.
Holy crap! And it's so funny. I'll just say this real quick.
Yeah,
I thought I got caught by my wife one time, and my buddy and I were at my garage, and we were building training explosives to come in. Really intricate, stuff, right? Well, wow. I had BS'd my wife. She used to call me the unhandy man because I never did any chores around the house.
Guilty of that.
And my wife at the time knocks the door up and she comes home early, from she was a big DJ.
Oh shit! And then she sees you lot. She
sees me like boom the thing. Now, mind you, this is explosives everywhere. Like I could have blown up for Dave and I are just like
ready to do some Rambo shit.
The only thing she says, to me, she sees all of this and all she sees is me doing electronics and doing things. She goes, "Son of a bitch!" She goes, "You know how to do that stuff?" And I'm like, she goes, "You're fixing this weekend,
She's like, "Why aren't you out there hot wiring cars?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was really funny.
Yeah, that's class, man.
So we did that, but that was unique. So it was kind of Vegas was kind of like the wild west back in those days.
Yeah.
And then you had I try to explain to people Vegas in the early 2000s. If you didn't experience it, it's hard to
explain it.
People to understand because it was before the crash, the real estate crash. It was this buildup. Vegas had just started the started the What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas campaign, which was wildly successful, completely true.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the MBGM used to have an amusement park, and they tried this family-friendly stuff that just failed horribly. It switched around so fast. And I know when you're talking to Genghis, you know, he had the Ultra Lounge. He was the first Ultra Lounge Taboo, and it was on Time Magazine and the whole thing. I mean, Vegas, like, completely reinvented itself. You would, you'd come to Vegas in the summer prior to all this, and you could get rooms for like $29 and stuff. It was dead. Vegas was dead in the summer. And then the Hard Rock hit. And Hard Rock did the pool party, and that made us year round. You know, and then all the clubs started to come in, and we became known for entertainment now. Like the kids from LA would come, you know, to actually start the party. So what you guys are doing, you know, that really started to take off back then, the bachelor parties. You had it before, but you didn't have the organization.
Yeah, this is what people were saying about sort of like over the last, we come in at a good time, like 10 years ago, because that's when it's really started to raise up. But before then, by the same, like Gengos was saying, there's only sort of like 4 or 5 clubs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was it. Now, me too, just to give you background on me real quick. I'm out here, and you know, I'm staying at the Luxor stuff. I'm dating this really hot dancer that's out there. She's a crazy horse too, and mind you, I'm oblivious like about drugs and stuff like that. Like I didn't realize. She takes me to the club. It was Club Utopia, and that was like the club back then.
Right.
And I'm in there, I'm going in with all these dancers and everything. But I walk in, and my first thought is, holy shit. People are so healthy here. Everybody's drinking water. They're nice. They're hugging.
You're on the pills and that.
I had no idea, you know. And I'm like, wow, this is great, you know. That was really funny.
So did no one ever try and give you one, or no one?
I just, you know, I had lived so long.
I suppose military as well.
Tested. I had my clearances. I had all my other stuff, and so it just was something I just wasn't aware of that culture. You know, I did counter narcotics work in South America, but I had never been around a lot of people that had in like a Vegas style rave type thing. You know.
Wait, hold on a sec. You did counter narcotics in South America. Yeah. So was you like sort of trying to find big drug dealers and that? And just bust them?
If you guys watched any of the Narcos series on Netflix. Okay, that was my era when I was there. It was wild. The guys that are consulting on that have done an amazing job. So I was in
trying to track down
special warfare intelligence, and so we worked with the DEA down there. It was called Operation Snowcap. And so I was down mostly in Venezuela.
Nice name.
So I was mostly in Venezuela, and you know, pre-Chavez, Venezuela was so fun back then.
Yeah, a lot of it comes out of Venezuela.
Because Venezuela then was the place to be, and they were having problems with the Colombians and the Brazilians coming in and doing things. So it's really weird. Now it's flipped. Now everybody's worried about the Venezuelans, you know, because the economy's changed so much. So I'd been used to that, and that was mostly cocaine. That was mostly, you know, it wasn't really even. I really didn't get a lot of experience with meth or anything. That hadn't happened at that point. That was more of a LA thing.
Coke probably the big thing back in the day. That was that introducing that, all like the Tony Montana and all that.
Oh yeah, that was very. We used to do a lot of work in Miami back in the day.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of it come through as well. Yeah. Miami Port, wasn't it?
Miami in the late '80s, early '90s was crazy, and then even towards the end of like early 2000s, it was bad. Not as bad as the Scarface days, but it was legit. You know, like Miami wasn't a place you really went to party. Like if you went to South Beach back then, it was squalor. Nice. They've really revamped Miami and everything. But it was really so I had that kind of a background, but socially I'd never really seen, you know, people, you know, using drugs and stuff. It just wasn't in my circles. And so it's so funny.
I would have loved to have seen his face, like when he's in the club and he's seeing what's going on.
My girl laughed her ass off when I told her, you know, oh, man, I'm so healthy, you know, drinking water, and she goes, yeah, they're drinking water because they're overheating because they're taking this. It was really funny. So, but Vegas also then was like even that. I'm not saying it was innocent, but like when you went to a strip club back then, all the girls were single practitioners. There was none. There
Oh, I
was
see.
no pimps. There was
Yeah,
none of
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
There was
Right.
nobody running.
They were just working alone,
Yeah,
sort
it was
of thing.
fun.
Independent,
And some of the funniest like if you're not used to. Like it's very accepted, you know. Like you would have business meetings at strip clubs and stuff like that. It was fun. Like, and I mean, like prominent people would go there.
Yeah.
And I remember if you see Ocean's 11, the first Ocean's 11 with Pitt and Clooney, it really captures that time. That's really how Vegas was. And one of the key things that my friends and I all laugh about, Genghis and I laugh about this all the time, is there's that one scene where Brad Pitt's talking to a stripper outside of the old Crazy Horse 2.
Yeah.
And at the very end, she's leaving. He goes, "Hey, say hi to your mom." And she goes, "Yeah, well, you go say hi to her. She's up next." You know?
On stage in 5 minutes, and
you
he's like,
literally had it. You had mother daughters, stripping and everything. It was it was a crazy time to be here. But that's where that's when I started here.
okay,
And then I had my business. Now my business switched over to doing more close protection. I did some close protection training of teams and stuff like that. And I started integrating with people. And then our training was here. I'd have civilian and corporate training here, mostly hand-to-hand, mostly execs that were going overseas, anti-kidnapping, all those concerns.
That's what
I
was
wanted
going
to
to
dive into it.
Yeah, like see, like sort of the people, but obviously it's only down to what you can actually talk about, because you might not be able to mention certain people or whatever. But we was going to say, like, who is like the sort of biggest person you've done close protection for, or if you've got any sort of stories where
we did. What was interesting was, like, I remember the first guy I trained in a big corporate setting was the head of ExxonMobil, and that was Lou Noto at the time, and him and his family, because there was a lot of kidnapping of oil execs back then.
I see, and bribery and all
everywhere.
that.
And so they had a lot of. So we were working with a lot of guys who protected the pipelines and stuff like that. And I was working with a lot of the negotiators, the guys would go in and negotiate for the release of the capturing guys.
Wow.
So it was wild, training those people. But the more interesting thing was, I started realizing that I never thought that the civilian population would like the approach to training that we do, because it's pretty much it's pretty military in focus, meaning it was, when I train somebody for that type of stuff in close protection, you assume three things. You assume that you're going to face multiple attackers. Those attackers are going to be bigger, faster, and stronger, and they're going to be carrying weapons. And so I trained everybody from the idea of your brain body first and how you can injure the human body. But the reason I do that, especially with civilians, is once they understand, if it gets to the point to where they have to fight for their life, what it's going to take, they get a lot smarter about how they live their lives. And so then it's much easier. If I give them the stark reality of violence up front, then when I tell them, hey, this is why you have your security team, this is why you listen to them, this is why you go here,
they sort of work
because
backwards.
Look what happens when you don't.
You
want to get that. So it's not the idea of trying to turn a corporate exec into like a ninja or anything like that, or a spec ops guy.
It's awareness,
It's awareness, and also it gives them some good skill sets. But what was funny was I didn't realize it was also after 9/11, and that was the other thing. 9/11 changed everything. Everybody's much more comfortable with that type of training after, and so that's how then Genghis and I met when we started to do some of the projects that we have here, and he his military background. Did he tell you how we met?
Ex-wife in the gym.
That's cool.
Do you know what?
Really
Fair
cool
play to you for that, though, because that just shows like you're a humble guy. Because a lot of guys would be like, "Who's that guy? Like getting on with my ex-missus, blah blah blah." But the way you handled it, you know what I mean? I take my hat off to you for that, because that's not a lot of guys would do that.
My thought process was, "Who's this guy that can outlast me?" He was with her longer than I was married to her. So I was I got to meet this guy. But we hit it off, and we noticed that Vegas had some opportunities to do some sorts of training. We were like-minded in a lot of things, and it was really interesting because his background was super useful, because when we put the whole thing together, to realize you can do firearms experience here, but kind of, and you guys will relate to this, everything that we saw when we first got here was not customer service oriented. And so what we decided to do was said, hey, listen, you got a lot of international tourists that come through here. They do want to shoot machine guns. Like we have more, we go through more ammunition than the Marine Corps training budget when it comes to it. So Vegas is like crazy. Like with all the machine gun places that we have here, the amount of ammo that we buy and everything here is ungodly when you think about it, you know, because it's all there. But what was great was he and I we originally thought we were going to build like a outdoor training facility, which we now have that. Yeah. But we went and saw the most popular place here in town, and it was a place called the Gun Store, and it was like a bad looking roller rink, you know, just dingy and just it's awful. And the reason I went there, and this will be one of my clients I can talk about, Tony Robbins been a longtime client of mine, and I trained his platinum group, and we go all over the world and everything. He had an issue where something happened with him and his wife, and he realized it was a close call, but he also realized, hey, I want her trained. I want her to train in firearms. He goes, but I got to get her comfortable with it. Yeah. And so he called me. He goes, what can you do? And so I had a friend who knew the guys at the gun store, and we set it up. So I take Tony there. Now imagine it's Tony Robbins, right? Yeah. And at that point, he's still huge now, but then I forgot what had come out of something, but he was like, boom, he was up there, you know? I mean, megastar. Yeah. This place, we had a reservation. I was supposed to take him in the sideway. No, I had to take him in the front area. In the private range, there were two of the RSOs that were working there. They just decided they wanted to keep shooting. And so he left them out there. He left us out there for like 25 minutes standing. Now, Tony was great, but people were swamping him.
Yeah, of course they would do.
And I'm looking at it, and I call Genghis. I go, you will not believe what the fuck is going on here. He goes, what? I go, dude, this place is making boatloads of cash, and these guys are idiots. You know, like no customer service. And I'll say it because I know these guys. Yeah. But so we're saying, you got a celebrity coming in. There's no way to bring them in, especially a celebrity that wants to be kind of low key about it. Okay, yeah. And so that's when we realized there was a hole in the market for a kind of high end customer service approach to this, and that's when he and I we shifted from the idea of doing the outdoor corporate training type facility that we knew Vegas needed to where we went into MGV. You know that we did.
How long ago was that?
It's our 13th year.
So, when that pandemonium kicked off with Tony outside that other place, that was like 13 years ago. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was great, and he was awesome about it. Like, our current manager, BB, she is. If you haven't met her, you got to meet her, man.
I've met her. Yeah. She's funny.
BB's hilarious. Yeah. She looks like Amy Winehouse with
really. She took us out to on the desert, the outdoor stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Beebs is great. Yeah. So she went with Tony. You'll appreciate because you know what she's like. Yeah. So I'm sitting there, and she's the girl that I got at the gun store. I'd heard she was really good, and she handled them great because we were a little annoyed, and she gets it right away. But Tony, to this day, will still tell this story that BB really didn't kind of know who he was, and she honestly didn't know who he was. Okay. I know, and he's explaining who he is, and in her southern accent, she looks at it, she goes,
she don't give a shit.
She goes, so you're like the Billy Graham for really fucked up people, you know? and I've never seen Tony not have words. He just like, his wife was just crying. We were like,
left him speechless.
And that was BB, you know? She's just like, that's what I say. But, you know, it was incredible because it was a totally random event that got us to see the opportunity. Yeah. We went a completely different pivot, and we went into it, and it's been great. And then, of course, it was right up G's alley, Genghis's alley, because he knew everything about customer service. Not only did he know everything about customer service, he also has a great design eye, you know, on how to design places. You know, people, when we first opened, New York Times covered us, everybody. We had massive press because there's nothing like it in Vegas before, you know, high end. Our girls were all in cat suits, you know, like Lara Croft type things, and we had iPads. And so everything was designed to make the customer feel comfortable.
Yeah. And both of your backgrounds as well, it just seems like that was, you know what I mean, it was destined to happen because
it was easy because I'd had my ATF license since like 92. And so it was easy for me. They knew me. And so that was my focus. and then G took over design, and he really understood Vegas. Like, and Vegas has evolved. You guys probably seen when we were first doing it. It was all about taxi cabs, taxis delivering people and stuff, and the marketing was really different. Now it's all social media.
Yeah, massive.
It's really like the old way of getting customers in Vegas. Once you're here, kind of went away, and we had to really learn that. But when we first opened, he knew everything. He just knew how to plug in all that stuff. I knew how to make sure that we stayed out of orange jumpsuits by making sure everything was, taken care of.
Yeah.
And then our other partner, Jim, is he's just an amazing guy from he's out of New Jersey, and a finance guy, former hedge fund guy, and he just handled all of our negotiations that way. So it was a really good. We're a really good dynamic team that way. But to watch Vegas evolve and you go from we'd have bachelor parties, and we'd have that, but then all of a sudden you started to see like people that wanted more. They wanted an experience. And that's where we were able to really start to say, well, we can get this asset, we got this helicopter, we can do this, we can, and Vegas just allows you to do this. We have the ability to give somebody an experience out here that, very few people have. And then, the other thing is, because we all continue to all do our other businesses, we have this really eclectic mix of clients that come in all the time.
Imagine, yeah.
And it's just really interesting, the way we've worked it over the years. But for me, it's like, if you'd asked me any time in my life prior to being here, would you ever see yourself living in Vegas? And this is like almost 20 years in Vegas now.
Yeah.
Or it is 20 years, yeah. 20
That's
years.
the other thing I was going to ask Tim, So because obviously with your story, like how you started off in Phoenix with the Indians and stuff, then you come over to Vegas, and it sounds like a lot of your work over the years has been very much quite bespoke and job by job.
Right.
So you and a lot of the time one project leads to another project and stuff like that. But like, just before that, how did you end up in Phoenix? Like, where was you born and stuff? Like, and how did you end up there? Like,
so I'm a Navy kid.
Yeah.
My dad was an officer in the Navy, and went all around. Last command that he had was in San Diego.
Yeah.
We lived in officer housing in Coronado, and my backyard, chain link fence and the whole thing. My backyard, when I got there, I was like 12 years old, and I'm sitting there looking at the backyard, and there's a little highway. It's called the Silver Strand Highway. And then on the other side, there's this little compound. And there was like the best, like, I thought it was the best playground ever. It looked like the most incredible, like, monkey bars and everything. And I go, what's this? This is great. It had concertina wire. And my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, we just looked, oh, that's not hard. We get on our bikes. We ride across, we ride across there. We literally park our bikes on the fence. And I had a rug, and I throw the rug up over the concertina wire.
And you
we
made it over.
Scramble up and we go over, because I'd seen that in some commando movie.
Oh,
I was watching.
Yeah.
I go, oh, fuck, it works,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So my brother and I, every day we'd be playing on the what we didn't know was the SEAL obstacle course, and they started kicking us off. We had no idea, because it was the early age. Now everybody knows all spec ops and special operations. But even back with you guys, I remember talking to the guys at Hereford and the SAS and the guys at Pool at SBS. Back then, it was still really under wraps. You didn't really talk about it. And now, of course, everybody writes books and does everything. Right. But back then, it was really undercover. And I had never, even though I'd been a Navy kid, I'd never been exposed to the SEAL teams before. Right. And so I couldn't believe there's this job, So that was my from 12 on, I started taking cold showers.
That was your inspiration and all that. Yeah, so
yeah.
You've had it like right from the beginning. Like that was in like sort of that way of life and sort of the military and stuff. That's been ingrained in you from the get-go sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was it. And then what that led to, when I had a diving accident that ended my my career with the teams, and I had to switch over to Intel. And at the time, I thought it was the end of my life, because everything I'd worked for.
Yeah.
But it ended up opening up all these doors, and so like. My big strength in all of this is not necessarily being like the most amazing operator or anything like that. I'm very good at what I do, but I have access to better. What that gave me was a networking group of individuals.
And that's what it's all about.
I got to work with everybody, and it's come in so handy over the years with everything that we do. Like I told you how I was able to utilize it for Vegas when we were here.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. I think I try to tell everybody that, all my kids, everybody, like, you have to communicate, you have to talk, and you have to network, and you have to have, especially in this day and age, because everybody's stuck on the phones and everybody's there. Nobody's talking.
Nah.
Like, the great thing about you guys came in right away and we're having real conversations.
Yeah.
We're really talking.
Yeah.
That's such a rare commodity.
It is,
now.
mate. This is what we were talking about, weren't we, earlier today? This is exactly the same thing about networking and stuff like that. And away from the, the phones and the digital stuff, it's just, like real face-to-face human contact.
I'm sure some of your clients probably are, they don't know how to, community, and
especially the younger guys, the younger guys,
and that's 100%. Not a knock on them. It's just the way they grew up.
I just wanted to bring it a little bit back into what you were saying about teaching civilians and stuff, because now we've touched on social media. I saw on your social media that you do these reaction videos and stuff. Do you think that the public realize how vulnerable they are, and when it comes to real life scenarios where violence is the only answer because you have to protect yourself at the end of the day? Do you think people actually are aware of that? Or
in the US, and I did a lot of work in the UK. I used to do a lot of work in the UK.
We'll get into that before the pod finished, but go on.
But what's interesting is the more civilized a society is, because what they don't understand about that in your question, the reason it's so peaceful here, comparatively speaking to the rest of the world, is because we have our countries have a credible threat of violence to enforce our rules on that. You go to a place like Singapore, and I mean, the reason Singapore's so safe, the reason my daughters at 11 years old could walk around in Singapore at 2 a.m. if they wanted to. Not that I'd ever want them to do that, but they'd be safe because of the credible threat there. Everybody knows it's not worth it.
Of course.
So to answer your question, it depends who I'm training. When I'm training, say, a South American billionaire and his family, those kids know. Those kids are smart. They see violence all the time. They understand it's a reality. So a lot of the countries, it's actually easier for me to teach, say, Eastern Europe, South Americans, depending on where they're at.
If it's obvious they're under threat.
Violence, I don't have to convince them that that's a thing. Here and there, I have to really hammer it in.
Yeah.
Because it's such a surprise when it happens to them. And they don't realize, oftentimes, you can live a great life and you can live, a really peaceful life. But what you don't understand is if you make if you're not aware of what's going on, and you're not aware of what triggers violence and the ability to, get yourself out of there ahead of time. It's this awareness that people just don't have. And sometimes they stumble into it. And sometimes it'll be like challenging, like, they don't understand. They'll respond to a road rage incident or something, and they don't know you're challenging a white shark right now.
Yeah. That's the other thing as well. Like, a lot of it's about being streetwise a lot of the time, and a lot of these kids that grew up on their phones and stuff, they haven't really got that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And like, I was fortunate. Well, I say fortunate enough. I was brought up in certain areas where you sort of were conscious of what's going on. But a lot of people, they get brought up in areas where, like you say, it's all sunshine and rainbows, and it's all very much sugar coated. That they're just oblivious to what can happen. So it's just...
with my background, I used to be a fighter. I used to do boxing, and so that teaches you a lot in life. That you have this power. Through the law, it's a weapon. Do you know what I mean? But you learn that you have that power, and you only have to really use it at the very, very last second type thing.
Yeah.
But even on that point, what would you say is the best combat sport if you were to choose one, as much as you're going to be teaching?
It's probably down to the individual, though, I'd say, that sort of thing. But
I've known a lot of these people that they all rave about UFC and obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and stuff, and I'm just thinking, man, even when if you're in jeans or there's concrete and there's crowds of people, like I say, in real life-threatening situations, you can't use the things that you know.
Yeah, well, the problem is, too, people think when I say something like that, like I'm denigrating jiu-jitsu or something.
No.
Some of my friends, I have great jiu-jitsu friends, like world-class athletes. They choke the shit out of me. They're amazing athletes.
Yeah.
But they're the first ones to admit, hey, when I get on the street and
can't use that.
I'm not. I mean, jiu-jitsu guys will even talk about the fact that you don't get to see high-level jiu-jitsu in an MMA match because you can get hit in the face, and it's the reality of striking.
Yeah.
So what I do, like my daughters and my son, I started everybody off in jiu-jitsu. And the reason, I started everybody off, I would just tell anybody for the kids, the best gift you can give your kid is starting them off 4 or 5 years old in gymnastics. Okay. And the reason gymnastics is because it gives them a really good sense of their agility and balance.
Yeah.
And the easiest people that I've ever had to train are either former gymnasts that had some sort of a gymnastics background or dancers because they understand their footwork, you know. There's a famous fighter, a Ukrainian fighter that they had him, his dad made him do Ukrainian dance for 3 years before getting there. And everybody's laughing. This guy, I forgot who he is. He's very famous. You know who it was.
Right, yeah.
But just amazing footwork, you know, that he has. So I start there. So, and the reason I start off with jiu-jitsu is because, especially for my daughters, I want them not to freak out if somebody grabs them. I want them to understand. I don't want them to think that they're going to be able to, you know, I think it's a real fallacy when they use jiu-jitsu for self-defense, the way they show women that sometimes, because you have to account for strength. Yes. Injury is what will get you out. Injuring the human body is what will save you. Because if you injure somebody, you guys have all experienced it. If you touch a hot surface, your hand automatically comes off. You cannot not do that.
You
can't
just keep it on.
And then you realize, so you want to trigger those things in the human body by going to injury, where the trauma overloads the brain's ability to make a decision at that point. It has to respond to the injury. So when you're teaching people to go to the vulnerable parts of the human body and how to strike them to save their lives, it's there. But my starting point is if I can start them in like a jiu-jitsu, if I can start them there, because with kids especially, it's a fallacy to think that kids are going to be able to protect themselves. It's just there. I want them in there. It's up to us, you know, as parents and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. Protect them up until a certain age.
My grandfather taught us boxing. We did everything as kids, but you know, my uncles, man, if they saw any like larger kid or anything, my uncles were on it. Right away. So that's important. And then the reality of getting people to realize that, hey, my grandfather said it best. He would teach us boxing in his basement in Boston. That's where I'm originally from. That's where my family was really from.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
And so we'd be sitting there, and he'd love boxing. And it was so I didn't understand what he was really telling me at the time. But he'd say, boys, you know, because he had me and all my cousins. And he said, listen, this is great. This is how you fight. This is boxing. This is what you do. Then he'd point. And he'd point to the window in the basement, you know, out the street. He goes, but if anybody out there goes that,
it's a different story, isn't it?
He showed us injury to the human body. You know, he showed us, you know, like my grandfather, one of his best moves that he loved to do was he'd take a 2-knuckle punch at 45 degrees as he dropped down in like a close area, like a bar, and he'd punch the bladder. And the reason he punched the bladder is because he knew when a guy saw him going down like that, he'd automatically protect his groin. And by protecting your groin, you then highlight 3 inches above as a bladder. And it's
interesting.
It's a devastating strike.
Was that similar? You know, like Bruce Lee, because apparently he was like the 1-inch punch specialist, wasn't he? But did he die of that? Something similar, like round here. Like he got punched round here, or his belly button, or just below her. And that's what killed him eventually. I don't know.
I know Houdini died that way. He used to have people hit him all the time. He didn't prep, and a boxer, like a really good college boxer, hit him, and I think it exploded his spleen. I think that's how he died. Yeah. And
that's dangerous, man.
Proves how vulnerable the human body is. You know, Vegas, I feel completely safe in Vegas. There's police, there's security cameras, like on the main strip.
Especially on the strip. You go off it, it's a different story. Some of the stuff you see off the strip. But
it's kind of like the main strip is safe. There's like a couple of streets, like say, questionable, and then a little bit further, then you feel a bit safe again. But I mean,
Vegas has that illusion that you're there. Vegas does obviously have areas. One of the downsides of the mob leaving Vegas,
there's a bit more protection in that.
There's the corporations took over and stuff, and they didn't police Vegas the way they like. If you talk to guys back in the day, you didn't have to worry about gang members. You didn't have to worry none of that because they didn't want anything. They didn't want anything screwing with the money, you know. And it was a really nice place. And you could be a plumber. And the other thing that was great about Vegas back then is they didn't care who you were. If you tip the guy, say $20-$40, you could be seated right next to a media mogul. You know, it was that equality, and then things kind of changed when the corporations came in.
More of a hierarchy and stuff now, isn't there? Yeah, it's
but
not
then,
as easy
then
as
when
that.
you guys, like what you guys do, you guys are kind of bringing that back. You're able to come back. You make you come out here, you get your connections with everybody, and then your clients benefit from that because then they get right in where they need to go.
Yeah,
and that's such a great service to have, because the worst thing about Vegas is going to the wrong places.
Yes.
It kills me when somebody sits there and says, "Hey, I went here," and I go, "Oh,
I
God,
know.
Why didn't you call me?"
Yeah, especially if you've flown for 10 hours as well, and you know you've only got 4 or 5 days here. It's like you want to come to a concierge or someone that knows what they're talking about and knows where to go.
It's absolutely critical in Vegas that you do that, because the worst thing you can do is just randomly try to pick places. And that's why doing stuff like this is great. If people hear this, they'll do it, because Vegas can be amazing. You can have a really, really great time, or you can have
the worst time.
Yeah,
it
makes
you need the in. You sort of need to know.
Why do people go to Vegas? This sucks,
And the thing is, like you were saying earlier about how Vegas has evolved, and it's still evolving. And if you haven't got your finger on the pulse, or you don't know people who have got their finger on the pulse, it's quite easy to maybe do something that's 5 years old, the lineup. You might go, oh, here, there, and everywhere. But now, 5 years on, these are the hot spots to go. But you wouldn't know.
That's why you listen to our podcast.
Yeah, guys.
Stay up to date.
But I was going to say though, Tim, because this is like a question, because obviously we're in the UK, we haven't got any gun laws or anything like that yet. I just wanted to ask you, as an expert in the field, what are your thoughts on the gun laws in America and Vegas, but also like the Fifth Amendment and all that stuff? Do you think it's right to have that, or do you don't agree with it, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just a realist, okay? Because of every place I've traveled, the most dangerous places in the world are the places that have the most severe weapons laws. Meaning, I'll give you a perfect example. I speak for lots of corporate groups, and one of the groups that has me go around is called the Young Presidents Organization, YPO.
Yeah,
amazing group. Literally all around the world they took me. So I was done with my trip. I was going. I think I was doing Europe, the whole part of that world. And I was coming back, and the Bahamas chapter called me and said, "Hey, would you come in and do Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and then you end up here in Bahamas, and we'll put you up for a week and stuff like that." I'm like,
he just gets the best jobs.
Some of the
stuff that he talks about, man, is just class.
I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, oh shit, this will be easy.
Yeah,
because I had been in some pretty hairy parts that had real questions.
He's gone from snow cap to that.
I have never had more hellacious stories and challenges that these people brought to me, and these are very wealthy people. If you saw the original Daniel Craig, the first Daniel Craig James Bond,
007, yeah.
When he comes out of the water and the girl comes up on the thing, that's the Ocean Club.
Okay.
If you go watch that again, every one of those houses has had a home invasion.
Wow.
They come in off of the thing, and incredibly wealthy. These guys are yet you're not allowed to have any weapons. The Caribbean area by far per capita has more weapons than anywhere else in the world. Wow. Because you have all that. And so and the cops will tell you, they'll say, when you go to Bahamas, they go, "Hey, listen, we protected the Atlantis area, we protect this area, but when you go anywhere else, you're on your own."
Right.
And they know that and stuff like that. So what I've found is it's there. Where did I see it in the UK? The UK, when you guys first had your right around right around 2000, that time frame, you had a huge influx of, I think, North Africans that were coming in at that time, and North Africans, and of course the Jamaicans did it earlier, but they show up to the UK. And they go, "This place is great, love it." Boom.
Soft as shit. There's nothing going on. We're not. If we intrude, no one's got a gun to sort of attack us.
What they'll say is,
by violence.
They'll go, "Okay, you guys don't use knives because they tell you so."
Yeah.
Yet they're right here.
Yeah.
And so that when I was over there, what was really interesting was to see when I went. I did university. I did a year of university in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did tons of martial arts training when I was over there, mostly East End, East End stuff. I met guys like Lenny McGill and stuff like that. They were all back there in that day. That's just hardcore bouncers that were there, and just, I mean, tough.
Were you talking about Lenny McLean?
Yeah, Lenny
McLean. Sorry,
I keep saying McGill because there's a guy McGill here.
Yeah,
no, Lenny McLean. And then there were a couple other dudes that he worked with, and those guys were amazing. Like talking to them, just seeing the underground fights and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the travelers and all that. And as a young kid, that was some hardcore men. I mean, it's just tough as nails. Great fighters and truly understood injury. Like they knew, and they understood how to shut something down. Like Jeff Thompson, another really good friend. He's such a great guy. Man, we're talking about a guy who, if you don't know who he is, he was a bouncer in Coventry, was it?
Yeah, Coventry.
Yeah.
Coventry's a rough place, man.
Yeah. He talks about being a bouncer there, and he truly, you talk about the jiu-jitsu. He said, listen, he goes, I love jiu-jitsu, it's fantastic. He goes, the last thing you want to do in a urban setting like that, or in a close-in bar, is go to the ground. Because of course that's where everybody gets killed. Because you get kicked on the ground. People don't understand, when you're on the ground, when people are above you and they kick you, all of that force goes into your body. There's nothing that can dissipate because you're there. You can't get away. And so that's it. So he would talk about the idea, like he'd scramble, like he'd always teach the new guys, get off on your feet as soon as you can, get on your feet. And so when you talk to people that really deal with violence, it's there. So I know I'm going around with this, but but what I thought was so interesting, what shocked so many people in the UK, was there was a law and nobody paid attention to these people coming in, because they come from backgrounds where they had to do stuff like that. And what was most interesting, and the thing that really was scaring everybody back then, was the fact that the UK youth were like, okay, you're not going to protect us, you're not going to take it, these guys aren't going to come here to terrorists. And then they started picking up knives. And they started doing it. And when you don't understand that, it's there. So how do I feel about guns? I have noticed the abuses always come from a couple of areas. Majority of it is mental health issues. We're terrible with mental health, meaning the thought process, the number of people that we have that have legal license to carry and legally own firearms. I forgot what it was. It was like less than a percentage point of those people have ever abused the privilege or ever done anything criminal. Yeah,
because they've gone through so many steps to get that. Like, you've got to pass. And
so the thought process is, why would we disarm everybody because of a couple of idiots that are there? Why would we do that? I mean, the vast majority of people are responsible gun owners, and they really. And I know that scares people that aren't around guns. And I got to tell you, one of the greatest things ever is to have somebody say come from the UK or a place where guns are really tough, especially the Asians when they come in. And the first time they're there, and they have, and the reason we set our place up the way it is because they come in, they just have an irrational fear. And so they come in with this irrational fear. We take them through. We show them this is a device. This is how it works. This is what you do. And hey, it's kind of fun. They go away. They're not going to own a gun. They're not going to do that, but they don't have this irrational fear anymore. They go, oh, it's a tool. I understand what it does, and now I don't have to be like wildly scared of it. And oh, guess what? I was able to shoot it, know, and do that. So it's really cool to have people the familiarization that way. So listen, Genghis got in a lot of trouble because he did an interview. Not a lot of trouble. He gave an interview and he just was honest. He's like, we are firm about just because you can own a gun out here. And you can just buy a gun as long as you're a legal citizen and all that other stuff. I think it's highly irresponsible to buy a gun and not have real training and really do it. I don't think there's anything more dangerous than an untrained person with a firearm.
I agree with that.
So it's just like buying anything. Like you wouldn't just give somebody a driver's license and then
expect to drive. You're right.
And that's just it. So there's this thing, and I understand it's a Second Amendment, and I understand that you've got these. Everybody points to a situation like,
sorry, is it Second Amendment?
Yeah,
I said Fifth Amendment. I don't know why, but
okay.
But sorry,
but yeah, and so it's a controversial subject. It and both sides do disservices to each other. I think there's a really nice middle place where you can be a rational gun owner and but training is absolutely essential. I have so many people that I remember when things hit. I think when Obama was threatening to reduce the types of guns you could buy, everybody was calling us up like, "Hey, can I buy a gun? Can I buy a gun?" Like, hey, knucklehead, they're all gone, you know. And by the way, what are you gonna do with it? You know, like I've known you for 20 years. What are you gonna? I've told you come shooting anytime. You never have. I mean, you do understand what you're buying. You know, you're buying something that it is very good at one thing. You know, and that is ending a threat and killing somebody. Yeah. And you have to understand the responsibility that you have. You're responsible for every bullet that comes out of that gun. You know, and I don't think people take that seriously enough at times. They don't really think about what it means to use the weapon, you know.
That's why I was saying, linking back to earlier, knowing when you have that power. Obviously, a fist and a gun are completely two things, but knowing.
But the problem is when mentally deranged people can get a hold of, we're having issues where like parents have kids that are just, you know, they're whacked. They have issues, they're in there, and then they get a hold of parents' gun, and then we got these mass shootings. And of course, it's there, but the consistency in every one of those mass shootings is not the gun.
It's the person.
It's the person. They're all.
They're not quite right in their head. Yeah, you're right.
And the argument is, well, if they didn't have the gun, they couldn't have killed as many people. And then I show. There's great videos.
Some other way. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there's great videos of China where a guy is running around. He stabbed 57 people before he was stopped. Going around like somebody with a knife is very dangerous. Like when they want to do it. Yeah. You know,
it's intent, isn't it?
Yeah. And so it's all intent. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So listen, I get it. It's I do not cavalierly say this stuff. I'm not one of those, you know, people. I understand what it is like to have to make that decision. And, you know, it has to be taken, you know, seriously.
Yeah, I think you're right though with that, because I think in the UK, I think we'd all feel more protected if we had guns, because we're thinking rational. We know we're not going to go out and start spraying it and whatever else. Yeah. And also as well, I don't think we've got as many open spaces. Like a lot more people in America live like by themselves, isolated. Yeah. So like they need that, because if someone does come, what are they going to do? Like with a lot of places in England, because we're more, I suppose, densely populated, especially in the cities and stuff. It's like if something was going to happen, you can shout and a neighbour's going to come out or someone's going to come out and whatever. But over here and Australia and places like that, it's like you sort of need that reassurance and that protection at home.
Yeah, because
someone tries it.
Response time is going to be long.
So I fully get that.
And that's what a lot of anti, Second Amendment people don't take into account. They're looking at it from living in their very urban environment, and they're thinking, I've got all these crazy people walking around. What if they all had guns? They'd be shooting me. So it's something to consider. It's not something to be taken lightly at all. That's the one thing I'll say. I mean, I am very glad we have it in Nevada. It happens to be a great state. That way, very, very pro-gun. But with that comes responsibility. You know? And that's the only thing I don't like. I see some people not taking it seriously enough. And then the idiots that are leaving their guns in their cars.
Oh, right. Like that's it. But again, though, this comes back to what you're saying about the training. It's like, you know, that would be one of the first things, how to, you know, store and handle the gun or whatever. But you're right, man. I think that's probably a thing too. You know, America maybe look at when you're buying a gun, you need to go through X, Y, and Z worth of training, get a certificate, and then that's.
Yeah, but I mean, there are ways we can do it. We can do it where you can buy the gun, have it in case, God forbid, you need it right away. But I would say in 120 days, if you have not gone through the training,
you get it. You have to take it back.
That would be,
you know, I think there are compromises you can come up with.
It's good for it to come from an American citizen as well. So obviously, it's a Vegas podcast. We're from the UK. We love to go to Vegas, and we have sort of that understanding. But sometimes British people don't really know, so it's respectful to come from someone who actually knows.
Yeah, and I totally understand. Like it makes if you're uninitiated with firearms and you see some of the crazy stuff that happens, I totally get it. Yeah, you know, in the
UK gets a bit disconnected by that sometimes.
But think about it: we don't do that. Cars kill more people than anybody. Yet we don't take anybody. Well, we do punish the drunk driver. You get in there. I say severe punishment for anybody that misuses the firearms. And that's the same thing. I feel the same way about law enforcement. I feel don't defang the police. Take care of the bad ones. Yeah, and that's the problem. Like a lot of times there are barriers in the way. There are unions that protect these idiots and on there, and so we end up getting a much less safe place because these agencies are put under ridiculous controls where they can't actually protect the citizens.
Yeah,
and it's just this weirdness.
This is the thing, man. This is like this debate, and like part of me thinks I shouldn't have brought up the Second Amendment stuff because we could literally talk all day on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And really, like the focus is on Vegas and it's on you, Tim, and stuff like that. But I just wanted to get your spin on it.
Yeah,
you get what I mean?
It comes back like for your clients. As you said, you're really, Vegas is a very safe town.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to understand, we handle more, my wife used to be, before she retired, she was the assistant sheriff here. So she's number 3 at Metro. And on any weekend, we would handle Super Bowl like crowds, like F1s and stuff. I mean, we have everything in Vegas just shakes it off. We can handle it. So realize when you come here, you have a law enforcement community that handles some of the most challenging venues that you can. So you've got great protection here.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It's like in the UK, our police force, well, they're like, they get a lot of slander and stuff like that. They're not there on time and this and the other. But I feel like that's the big part of it, because if you haven't got the guns yourself, you're relying on the state and you're relying on the police force to really be top notch, because that's your protection. Do you know what I mean? Because if we haven't got our own protection, that's who we're relying on to get there within 10 minutes or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
What they want, though.
I got to tell you, one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, let's wrap up. Go on.
It's when you say the UK. One of my favorite things to do is watch episodes of Coppers.
Oh, dude.
Those guys get slagged so bad,
mate.
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
see
man.
that. It's,
They do get hammered. Is there anything else we wanted to say, Bunty?
Well, I know that when you were talking about the UK, because you did a podcast with Steve, didn't you, not too long ago?
Yeah.
You were saying that there was an issue or something with you in the UK. I don't know much about it. But
I can give you like a Reader's Digest, but
yeah,
that could probably be another time when we're talking. It's a bit of a story.
Yeah, it's a long one, man.
You know what we could do? We could reference our interview.
Yeah,
because we did talk about it. Steve was laughing his ass off.
I was gonna say
because we've already gone through it. So we can if you have for that story, check out the the podcast with me and Tim. And we've got some fun in there.
I was gonna say, is there also some advice you could give, because I wouldn't say that I've trained my missus up in terms of combat. I've done a little bit with the boxing here and there, but what I have seen a lot, especially in the UK, like when there's a lot of big clubbing scenes and then guys get drunk and they fight and stuff. But sometimes when they've got the girl next to them, they kind of panic and they either they hold their boyfriend's arm and they're like,
check out Tim's Instagram, because he's got it all on there, man.
I go over that a lot on that, and that's the thing that the most. I understand why women think they want to do it. They have no idea the danger they're putting themselves in.
Yeah.
When guys are at that point, there's a way to approach it, but females are they're not helping their guy by doing that.
Yeah,
that's what I've said to my mom.
That's the other
you
thing.
Need to be out of the way.
You got to have that. It's so smart. You got to have that discussion ahead of time, and she has to understand why.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not that people want to fight. Obviously, when people are drunk or whatever, but it's like sometimes when it just gets to that point, like you said, it's a life-threatening situation. I need to be focused on how, like you said, injuring the body or whatever. I can't be focused on you and worrying about.
9 times out of 10, she's had a drink as well, so that's why she's not thinking rational, and it's just a bit of a situation.
Even worse if they're the one who's got you in the situation. I've been out with girls and they're like, "Oh, well, I know my friend and he'll."
Like, are you going to take that? I'll get my boyfriend and all this shit. And then you're like,
Well,
so
that's like I'll just leave it at this. Like what I try to tell everybody is, if you go around. And sometimes it sounds like paranoid, but I tell people, if you go around life with people you don't know and treat them like they're 6 seconds away from a shooting spree, you ask yourself, how would you communicate with that person? Well, you're not going to trigger them. You're not going to respond to anything like that. You're going to realize that stuff. And if you have that discipline, it really keeps you out of a lot of trouble. And so that's something
that's great advice.
Yeah.
Who would you recommend would be great to come on VIP Vegas podcast and talk about Vegas and have some?
It might be really cool for you to have. So my wife now is she is the head of security for the World Cup for FIFA.
Oh, wow.
The kids, she and the kids are in Miami right now, and that's where she's based till the 26th. But she ran Vegas for a long time and really understands it, and was a showgirl. She
Oh,
started out
wow.
as a showgirl. Yeah, she did.
Wow, she sounds like she's got a bit of a journey as well. Then,
And she's like, oh yeah, great martial arts background, beautiful, all that. But great understanding of the streets of Vegas, great understanding of the customers, and she's handled the all the big events. So she's done Super Bowl, she's done F1, she's done NBA,
That'd be
all
perfect.
of that,
Yeah,
and what it's like to go to the event. Like she can tell you, hey, this is where we've had problems. Like what you could sit there and say, hey, international tourists coming here, what's the biggest mistakes they make? She'd be great for that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's the sort of stuff that our viewers
I'd be glad
want
to
to
make
see.
that introduction if you guys.
Yeah, nice.
Appreciate that. So where can everybody find you, Tim?
Well, obviously, we're here at Machine Guns Vegas, and that's the business we've been talking about. Myself, probably the best place to see me is Instagram, and I'm just Tim Larkin TFT. TFT just stands for the training that I do, and you find that. And a lot of great free information. And if you're interested in any things we were talking about, I go in depth on all of that stuff.
Perfect.
So
Lovely.
Yeah, honestly, thank you ever so much for your time.
Great
Nice
seeing
one,
you guys,
Tim.
man.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening to VIP Vegas podcast. Until next time.
See you soon, guys. Take care.